Good morning, everyone. Okay, so preventing and responding to crisis. So we're going to talk about de-escalation. Okay. Why do you feel like we need to talk to this? Y'all talk to me. Why we have to talk about this? Anybody, everybody yell? Well, okay.
Sorry, we were muted.
Why do you feel like we need to talk about how we respond to behavior? Because how we respond is crucial to how the students respond. So behavior acts upon behavior. So sometimes our behavior can stop behaviors that are getting ready to happen. Yesterday, or for the past 2 days, I've been going through all these files, and I've been documenting the behavior, the write-ups that were done last year on the students on my caseload, the first set of, the students for my caseload. And there was a kind of a trend on the write-ups. One thing I found that there was a certain subject that had more write-ups, and there was a set of about 3 teachers that did most of the write-ups. And it was funny because it was all the same subject. And why it's like that, I don't know, but you better bet, the researcher I am, I'm going to investigate this year. And so it's just kind of tripped out. And a lot of these students in that stack are the students that came to DAEP last year and the year before. Well,
that probably means you could probably jump down to number 3, Doc Hodge, what those were, and that's usually where that falls into.
Yes, and so we will get into that, about power struggles and how it's not beneficial to you or the student, because basically you're not going to win, not in this day and age with the students. Okay, trying to. All right. So anxiety. Let's talk about anxiety. With the students coming in this year, we don't know what the psyche is going to be like. And so the one thing that it would be good for a teacher to recognize if there's an increased level in anxiety in your student as well as yourself. And so think about the different things or people that you know very well that have had, like, you could tell that their anxiety was kicking in. Think about some of the things that you do when you are nervous or when you're starting to get upset, how you start to breathe, maybe you start pacing, maybe you start holding your breath. I mean, think about these different things. And so since our students, I think my job this year is to try to help keep students from, coming back to DAEP a lot this year. We'll see how that goes, because some things I can't stop if they bring drugs on the campus and stuff like that. So one thing I'll be doing is looking at their behavior, looking for noticeable increases of anxiety and what that may look like. Okay, so because of social distancing, we already have to keep our space from the students. So this is good practice that you'll be able to take on to years forward. A lot of students, when I worked in elementary, I could get really close to a regular general ed kid and whisper something in their ear and just see the look of fear come across their face. But a lot of the students we're going to be dealing with, if you do that, if you step in their space, you are causing an escalation. You may start something that you can't undo. And so remember personal space between you and the students. And so now you already have to keep your distance because of, like I said, because of the COVID. But remember that.
For you on line 1.
So we're not talking about names in here or what? Because I'm not in the room, but I
can't hear your question.
We're not.
What was your question, Kurt? Ms. Kirk, did you have a question?
No,
No, Joe, my computer.
Please step up to another mic on another computer and ask your question.
I was just asking if you could see me on the room because I'm not in Zoom on my computer. I'm having to use the big one.
Oh, okay.
Someone else.
No, I can't see you.
Okay.
So right here, there's some examples of the intimate zone, friend zone, social zone, and we're supposed to be in here anyway. But think about this. When you get, can you see my cursor moving?
Yes.
Okay, so when you get into this zone, that is a trusting zone. That's a trust zone. So until the students get to know you, you probably need to stay in this friend zone or the professional zone, like I like to call it, a professional zone. One thing we don't know what kind of trauma that the students have had to go through during this whole break. We do know this. We know that abuse skyrocketed. We know that police calls were skyrocketed. We know that alcoholism was out of control during COVID. And so remember that some of the students are going to be bringing this back with them. Let's talk about body language. Nonverbal, this is when our body talks without us having to move our mouth at all. And so that's one thing that we need to watch. I tell the story often about a few years ago when I was working with the young student that he was in kindergarten, and so he was wreaking havoc in his classroom. So was moving him for some days and having to put him back in class. So this one particular day, I had to put him back in class, and the teacher looked at him awfully, with her hand on her hip and her face is all ugly and stuff. And I was like, I really did not want to put the kid back in there because she was already setting him up for failure with her body language. And so we have to watch her body language because it speaks volumes. That's just a slide that talks about, what your language can say, be saying to people. Okay, so I have, let's see if I'll find it. Video for, oops. Not that. Just a second. Bars in the way. You don't see this?
Not really.
It's distorted.
In this video, we're going to talk about tone of voice and how your tone shapes the rest of your communication. So let's get into the details. Welcome back. I'm Alex Lyon, and this channel, Communication Coach, is here to help you become a better leader. And part of leadership is communication. Part of communication is tone of voice. Your tone communicates a lot more than you realize. So let's define it, and then we'll talk about some practical applications and details. First of all, your tone of voice is the musical notes that your voice communicates separated from your words. That's my own little definition, but your tone, your intonation, is really the sound of the voice as if you were to chart it out in music. So when I was a young kid, I used to hear my parents talking through the walls at night, and I couldn't hear their words, but I could hear their tone. My dad has a very low tone of voice. He's like a DJ on the radio. He has a baritone or even a bass voice. So he talks like this through the walls, blah, 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 like a tuba. Can't hear the words, but you can hear him playing that tuba. Blah, 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 blah. And then my mother has a higher voice, like a little clarinet. So she would respond, no, 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 no. And I would hear them going back and forth, blah, 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 no, 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 and having this conversation that sounded like two instruments communicating in a call and response. That's tone of voice, the musical sounds. And you may know people, for example, that have what you might call a sing-songy voice. They have lots of variety in their tone when they're communicating. And when we say tone of voice in an academic sense, that's what we mean. But in an everyday conversation, in a professional setting, if someone says their tone, they generally mean much more than that. Essentially, they mean any other kinds of vocal, nonverbal cues that the person is giving off. So their pacing, their volume, their emphasis, their pauses, we're hearing all of that, and we're saying that's their tone of voice. Because it's very hard to isolate in an everyday situation only the musical sound to their voice. We're hearing all of those nonverbal vocal cues together. And in fact, when I'm hearing my parents speak through the wall, I am absolutely hearing their tone, but I'm also hearing their volume. I'm hearing their pacing, their pauses, and I can tell if they're having a pleasant conversation or a not so pleasant conversation, as parents sometimes have, because the overall sound of their voice is what I'm hearing, even though I cannot hear the words. So when we say tone, we generally mean all of those vocal cues combined and collapsed into one. So this kind of communication has a lot of influence on the way we're hearing people's overall message. It adds shades of meaning, it adds emotion, it adds attitude to what we're hearing, and we're often more likely to believe nonverbal cues than we are the actual words. So if you ask me how I'm doing, and I said, I'm fine, well, obviously I'm not fine. Even though the text says I'm fine, if you look at the transcript, my nonverbal communication, my tone of voice says I am not fine. And there's a sentence on the internet, it's only 7 words, that I've been seeing all over the place when you look at tone of voice and so forth, that I want to share with you. It has only 7 words, but depending upon how you emphasize those words, the meaning of the sentence changes. So here it is.
Okay, so what did we hear? Do you have an idea of what he was trying to say?
Your tone is how the child will react to it.
Okay, we're back on.
Yeah.
Did you hear him also? He talked about how he could hear his parents walking and stuff like that. How important, I mean, that let him know some things. And so how we may even be moving around in our classroom, how we may handle things in our classroom. Like I said, we don't know what the students were subjected to while they were at home. And so I just want us to be cognizant of the different things that we do, even in our, our daily movement within our classroom, that we may have to change that up. We may have to be just a little bit more thoughtful on how we do things in our classroom, how we approach, how we talk, and those type of things. Pull this back up. Can y'all see this?
No.
Okay. Let me figure out how to pull it back up. There.
Doc Hodge,
Yes, sir.
if you have to, call on somebody if no one's going to volunteer up, because you're not the only one on this, and everybody needs to participate in this. So if you have to, call on someone.
Okay. Can y'all see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So we talked about inflictions. When people are doing hypnosis, they use a certain tone. Some people, they accuse people that can speak to large groups of people and they're able to influence them. Some people think that that's a type of hypnosis. I don't know that for sure, but I definitely have noticed that the different people that I like to listen to on YouTube, they like to kind of sing what they're saying. And I'll see y'all. Okay. So, all right, let me go to the next slide. Okay, so defensiveness. It's really easy when you think somebody's attacking you to be defensive. And when you say, okay. So when somebody's getting defensive, that's the first sign that they might be losing rationality. And so in CPI, we're taught that when somebody starts getting defensive, that we should be directive. You take control, but you keep that tone even. And so some of the key points of tone is that one of the ones I want to point out is sarcasm. Okay. And a lot of people, this is probably one of the hardest things for a lot of people with sarcasm. And sarcasm is fine in a sense because that's some people's personality and that's how they relate to people. But in an instance, when a student is starting to get defensive, that's not the time for sarcasm. That can really sometimes they don't understand what you're trying to say. And then sometimes, it's just not the right time that when the student starts getting defensive to use sarcasm, that can be construed almost as an issue with you. Okay, so our volume. You want to make sure that when you're engaged in a student that you keep that tone. Now, I have raised my voice a couple of times throughout the years, in certain instances, but for the most part, I always try to stay calm when I'm interacting with the students. And remember, the cadence is also about how I deliver my message through the tone, just like I'm doing right now. Okay, so the different types of questioning we have is information seeking. And so this is very possible that a student really does have a question, or it may be them trying to see how far they can actually go with you. So then you have the challenging, which is, there's that small little bit of power struggle begins. And then your job is to kind of downplay the challenge, just kind of downplay, don't feed into it. Don't feed into a challenge. Stick to the topic and set your limits. So if you don't do this, well, then you know that you don't get the grade for it. You're going to get an F. You don't need to go in and, and continue to, harp on it. If they continue doing inappropriate behaviors, and there's consequences for that. Be careful never to, you're out of here, because they may not be out of here. And so there's 5 approaches to setting limits. You need to explain what the inappropriate behavior is. And so you're going to go ahead and set the stage for what you want in your classroom at that first day of class. And so normally when the students, especially now since we have all these extra rules embedded within our system, you're going to go ahead and set the stage for what you want, how you want them to enter the room. Is it one at a time? And they, go to the chair that you're pointing at. So you're going to want to find that before they come in tomorrow. You're going to, and so when you see a behavior you don't like, you're going to explain why it's inappropriate. They may not know. And we have a lot of cussers that come in. They may not know it's inappropriate if their whole family, says all kinds of crazy stuff. And so, and it may not be a cuss word at home. And so, we have that issue with American and terms in the United Kingdom. Things that we say are cuss words. Things that they say over there could be cuss words, but they're not over here. Try to give, oh, can I go back? Okay. Try to give choices if possible. Allow time for the student to make the choice. Don't expect them to move like this. Don't expect that. You're setting yourself up for failure if you expect them. Give them time to process, because we don't always know what kind of cognitive level they are. They may need just a moment to be able to make a right choice. And trust me, this is something that you want them to learn, because people that fly off the handle, they haven't taken the time to make the appropriate choice. So when you give a directive, whether it's go sit down, allow for that wait time for them to be able to process and make the right choice, whether it's to go back to your seat, not hit their neighbor, go back and wash your hands. Give them that wait time. Enforce the positive and the negative consequences. I know back at DAP, we had always, there was always a question, well, is everybody going to enforce this, or everybody's going to enforce this? In your room, make sure you enforce it with everybody. Sometimes there's different, rules for different classes, and some of that's okay. But if there is a standard set by the whole campus that needs to be maintained, make sure that you're enforcing that rule for everybody. The students will call you on it, and they'll begin to act out if they don't see that you're being fair across the board. Understanding student circumferences. We just want to be proactive, and so there's a thing, there's a setting antidote, or a setting thing that we can, you want to set the stage for their positive success. And so if you know that a student, and I'm just throwing something out there and it's silly, but just take that and use it for like a real life. So if you know that the color pink can set off a student, and it's not changing the structure of your classroom, it's not changing anything. If that color pink can set off a student, then you're going to hide that pink thing. So it's that way your classroom can run. That's not something to have a power struggle over. Because if you purposely put that pink out there and you're saying, oh, well, they should know better, or they should already know how to do it, then you're setting yourself up for failure, and you're setting up that student for failure. Okay, so bad weather. I had a student, my early years of teaching, that would trip out if there was lightning. He was autistic. He had autism, and so he would get up under the table and just, and kind of freak out sometimes. And so I knew this coming in, and so after I witnessed it the first time, I decided to set some things in motion, so that if we knew that it was going to be rain and it was there was possibly going to be an issue, then the student knew, and we practiced it. And so that way the student knew what to do if we knew that a storm was coming. Then that was for him to put on his headphones, to grab a blanket out of the storage cabinet that we had, and he could still go under the table, but he would keep those headphones on until, everything was okay. And then at that point, while the storm was going on, his day would be done, or his day would be at a pause, so he could just really focus on something else. He would get a book, or or something, or take a nap, or whatever it was for that student. That was sped. I mean, that's a drastic example, but that's what we had to do for that student. So if a student, just think about the different things that can happen. And so the student woke up late, there's things that you can put in place if it's like continual. behavior affects the behavior. I already said this. This is where we understand that the behaviors and the attitudes of staff can actually create behaviors within the student. So we have to stay in control of ourselves, especially if we expect the students to stay in control. These are not the students of 20 years ago. These aren't the students of 40 years ago where, where, does somebody have something to say? I can't even see y'all right now, and I can't figure out how to pull y'all back up at this moment. So, does someone have something to say?
I was just saying, we can still see you.
Okay. So, you can still see me?
Yes.
Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So intimidation interventions. So a lot of our students, they could try the intimidation, the things that try to intimidate you. They'll do it with other students. And so the individuals verbally or non-verbally threaten staff, then you have to, if they try to intimidate you, just need to be direct with them, but don't try to be big and bad or anything like that. We do take all threats seriously, of course, because we'll have a lot of students that'll say over and over again that they're going to commit some act on somebody they don't like or whatever, and you'll find them being shown up at DAEP. We take all that serious, but also you need to stay calm. You want to seek assistance. That way, a threat assessment can be done. Avoid individual, and so this is like, okay, so this is actually like a serious matter. At some point, some things, if they're starting to threaten another student and they're getting physical, most of us out there would be trained with CPI to kind of intervene or whatever. So this is more for like the general ed teacher that is not trained, but most of us are trained to handle certain things, not everything. A hands-on approach at this time may trigger a physical behavior. So, and you know this, that we don't lay hands on students. We don't, we can stop them if they're trying to hurt themselves or hurt somebody else or even hurt us. We're trained, in CPI for that. But otherwise, just because a student may be acting a fool, we don't touch them. Verbal intervention tips and techniques. We always want to stay calm. And that's can actually be a learned behavior, staying calm within situations. We want to listen, and we want to see what their body language may be trying to tell us. Restate what you heard. So if a student's I think most of us had to take psychology, of course. And so if the student's saying, I just don't feel like I belong, then so you don't feel like, you just kind of restate what they're saying so you don't feel like you belong. You feel, I feel like you're picking on me. So you restate, you feel like I'm picking on you. And so make eye contact. Try to keep your voice as even as possible. Remember, no sarcasm. The power struggles, throw those out the door. Of course, don't promise things that you can't deliver. And that means like, you're out of here, you're suspended, you're not coming back, or you're never going to get on the computer again. Don't do that stuff. That has to come from somebody higher than you, no matter how bad you think it is or how bad you think the situation warrants. We can't do that as teachers. Rational detachment. This is something I had to learn early on. The behavior that you see from students, although it may seem to be directed at you, it is not about you, the behavior. And so once you figure out that the behavior, and you have to rationally, that's why the word rational, you have to rationally talk to yourself and remind yourself that just because he called you the B word, it's really not about you. sometimes it might be about somebody else in the classroom, sometimes, but not all the time. But just know as a teacher, it's not about you, some of the behavior that we're seeing, unless you did something to set that student off. Most of the time, it's not about you, no matter how they're acting towards you. And so sometimes you may be able to address it like that. Okay, so what, instead of you taking it personal that they tore up their paper, you could ask, what is it about that work that you don't like? It's hey math, what is it about math that you hate? Do you need some assistance? Would you like some help? I always have extra sheets, especially if you're working with the younger kids, 6th grade and down, possibly even 9th grade. Make sure you have extra sheets of all the work but I know they're doing a lot of stuff on the computer. So what are your buttons? This is a good thing to know. I would even take some time. I tell you what, go ahead and turn and talk to are y'all, is everybody in the room by themselves or?
No, we're in one classroom.
Okay, go ahead and take a couple of minutes while I figure out how to work this thing and talk to each other about your triggers, your own triggers, while I figure out how to pull y'all back up so I can see you. Are y'all talking?
I telling y'all my triggers. Y'all use them against me.
Somebody's unmuted.
Yeah, someone's not.
Oops. What happened? I think I accidentally muted everybody. That's weird. Mr. Strauss, how do I pull this back up? Can't even hear
What do you want?
I'm trying to pull y'all back up so I can see y'all.
Go to the top where it says Zoom meeting, and then the view options will pop up.
Where?
You were just on it. Go over there where it says more.
There you go. All right. All right, let's come back. So somebody tell me, Miss Hammond, tell me something that y'all talked about. Triggers. Miss Hammond.
Okay, hold on.
There we go. Okay, so we talked about, oh, that's a lot of echoes.
Everybody else mute but her.
What were your triggers?
Okay.
Okay, so we talked about, it kind of depends on what the situation is. Like you might have a trigger for one student, but that might not be the same for the other student.
Okay, okay. Andrea Glazebrook. What are some of your triggers?
Mine can be when the child comes in
depending on. Yeah, I don't know why it's echoing. Hold on. Maybe mute yours and let's try this one.
Okay.
How's that?
Perfect.
No, we're still echoing. Somebody's got to turn it off.
Talk from right there. It's good.
Somebody needs to mute theirs maybe.
Talk from right there. I can hear you. Jennifer Kurt,
Yes.
tell me about your triggers. I mean, mute her. How are you playing? Tell me about your triggers, Miss Kurt.
Am I talking through that? If I'm talking through the TV?
I can hear you from where you're at. Hello?
Or can you hear me here?
I can hear you.
I was just thinking of a particular student. She would get really wound up but be irrational. We're still-
Tell Jones to mute her mic, please.
Not Ms. Jones. It was, you were just reverbing.
No, it's still doing it. Do I need to unmute mine? I mean,
Are you hearing anything, Tyra?
I hear you now.
if I, well, if I unmute, then you can hear.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, so remember that you're the adult. You need to stay in control. And understand your triggers so they don't have you acting out. So, and maybe even understand your coworkers, understand your boss's triggers. And once you understand those, then it really helps. You know, it helps everything. It helps the job situation, everything. Plan how plan how you're going to handle an oppositional student. So already have a plan in place. If you know a certain student does this, then understand what you need to do. One, to keep that student in your classroom. Two, to be able to keep it from escalating, far beyond what anybody wants. Remember that you're not the target. It's not about you. You are a professional and know how to handle the situation. Team approach. You need to remember that you need to set your limits. If you have a bad day, it is okay. And many of y'all a couple of you would come to me and talk about, the troubles that you're having with the kid. You do need to debrief, actually. That's one thing that counselors do when they hit a behavior specialist. I was taught that many years ago. So when we have to restrain a student or a student acts out, we go back and debrief. And during that debriefing process, you're actually going to talk about things that you can do better the next time. And so this helps you. This is that practice, even though it was a real situation, is that practice that helps you be able to do it better the next time. As educators, we're always growing. We're growing. We're never arrived because something new shows up into our classroom all the time. And so we need to use each situation to learn how to work on the next situation to be able to figure it out. Debrief with a colleague. Even your counselor, if she's on campus, make an appointment to talk to your counselor. They're for that as well. And so I remember when I worked in Galena Park, we'd often talk to our LSSPs. We had it, it was part of the protocol. We had to debrief. It helps you to get it off your chest, and it helps you to be able to go back to make sure there wasn't, and it's okay if there was something, as long as nobody gets hurt and hands weren't laid on a student. It's okay to go in there and talk about, okay, you know, maybe next time I don't say this. Next time I need to handle it this way. Call for help or call a colleague or something to call in there so I can step out for a second. So debriefing is a very good thing. We don't do enough of it. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because you are important. Make sure that you're getting the rest that you need. Make sure that you're getting the training that you need. Make sure that you're talking to your coworkers. Wow, I didn't know that was there. I don't remember that. I think I made this before I stopped drinking. Anyway, let's take a moment. So fill in the blank. Let me hear from you. Miss Jones, fill in the blank for me. Why'd you run off, Sims?
I'm just unmuting so we can talk to you there.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sims.
You don't have to talk into it, Miss Jones. I can hear you from where you are.
Okay.
Teaching is.
Teaching is a good responsibility.
Okay.
Is that something?
Teaching is, Ms. Kurt.
Teaching is a rewarding experience and fun.
It can be, can it?
It can't. It even
Teaching is, Mr. Strauss.
that might.
It really sucks that it keeps doing that.
Mr. Sims, mute the, is it Glaze Brooks' computer on the TV?
Yeah, we have it now. It was just reverbing through some of the computers, but we're good now.
Okay, there we go.
Sounds good. Okay. All right.
You asking me, Doc Hodge?
Yep.
Teaching is always learning.
It is. It is. Definitely is.
I mean, if you think you know everything, you don't.
And you know, and people a lot of times, if they only have one trick in their bag, they're usually not very good at their job. You have to have a variety, or be willing to learn a variety of different methods when dealing with the kids that we work with. So, questions. Give me some questions or comments. How do y'all feel about going into this new year?
Confused.
Why do you feel confused?
I feel like we're gonna be all right. We're starting off slow, so
Don't y'all have like 2 students?
yeah.
Y'all, that's a blessing. Y'all haven't had that in a while.
They're gonna teach the crap out of them.
Yes, they're gonna learn. They're gonna learn.
Coming to DAP now.
Go back to who was confused?
Of course it was Jones.
What are you confused about?
You know how me and technology get along?
Well, you're going to have to get over that confusion, because technology's here to stay.
Don't
They
we?
had like, they were training on that Canvas for like 2 days straight here at our campus. So that is like constant.
Yeah, we got like a day and a half, because they had to go, it ended up being a 1 day for us, because they had to go back and do day 1 on a half a day and day 2 on the second half of that day, and that's all we got.
So we know that teaching is stressful, and so it's important for you to take care of yourself and for y'all to take care of each other. We know that educator burnout is a true thing. Lots of teachers, they stop after about 5 years, and but y'all have made it. Those of you that have been here longer than Ms. Hammond, y'all have made it. So Ms. Hammond, they got you. You got a good team to work with. Okay, so let's look at some of the signs of burnout. Be careful. That way you don't get caught up, you know, in your emotions. and your feelings, look for your irritabilities, make sure you check your own triggers. Paranoia, don't get paranoid thinking that everybody's out to get you and the student is targeting you. The students are going to have their own little triggers and paranoia. Like I say again, make sure you're getting enough rest. Okay. Okay, so this was just a study done on, believe it or not, okay, so this was interesting. This has nothing to do with anything, but one of the major stressors, where is it, for educators? Wait, where was it? I just thought it was interesting. I may have taken it out. But look at this fatigue and exhaustion. So y'all watch yourselves. Insomnia, eating. We usually don't have a problem eating with us, so that was kind of low. We're getting enough food.
Were you looking at me when you said that, Hodge?
I'm the one that gained 15 extra pounds when Corona started. I was already up. Okay. Okay, so what we're finding out in this, if y'all ever want to do a book study, I found this woman, and actually another behavior specialist in another district recommended it. And actually, I'll shoot Mr. Sorrell some videos that one of her TED Talks. And what she has found in her research, that, when their behavior is so outlandish, that it's trauma above trauma above trauma above trauma. Our student, we just think maybe a lot of times that like one thing has happened, but a lot of times it's layers of trauma. Maybe not having food, and then, the parents, being drug addicts, and then a parent getting arrested, then CPS stepping in. It's layers upon layers of trauma that causes some of the crazy behavior. So of course, the students have issues. So just remember that. So think about some students that you worked with. Think about some of the things that you did know about. I remember little Martine, a couple of years ago, somebody breaking into their house, stealing his passport, green card, or whatever it was. Then they got robbed for a whole bunch of money. I mean, and that was a big deal. That's all he could talk about all day long. And he needed to be able to talk about that, and that was okay. And because I allowed him to talk about that, his behavior was much better the next day, and even for that day, because that's what he needed to talk about. Oh, here it is. So look at, this was a 2017 poll. Look at the most common form of stress. Do you think this is true or not? I would like to hear from everybody on this. If not, tell me why.
Is this for like adults or for students, or a combination?
I don't know. I just found it. I think probably a combination, but I think it's for adults, because stress sometimes kids.
I don't feel like students think of the future of the nation very often, but money is definitely one that, everybody is thinking about.
And violence and crime. Because I know some of my students talked about shootings that were in their neighborhoods and not feeling safe and stuff like that.
I've heard them talk about that as well.
Mm-hmm. And work, you know, like we said, because parents being out of work or not having enough money at home.
Right, related to the finances, yeah.
But
And some of the older
political-
kids have to help work, so
Yeah.
they come in tired and pissed off before we even get them.
Well, that's
Yeah.
true too.
True. The ones that have to go to work after they get done with school.
Yeah.
So they have real issues. They do, but so do we.
Yeah.
When you look at that list, there's not one on that list that even is like small right now. Every one of those are happening right now.
And that was 2007.
And so this has probably been multiplied about 100 times what this was 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
Well, I think those things have always been around. I don't think they're anything new now.
Oh, but think about it. The future of our nation right now, I mean, we still got people burning down cities. They're going block by block
Yeah.
in some cities. And you know, we got people just letting it happen. So think about yourself right now. I knew that before every Friday, before I had to take my spelling test, when I actually started studying from them from 8th grade all the way to my senior year, right before a big test, I literally had to go to the restroom. My stomach would start messing up so bad. I'm talking over a spelling test. I had to go poop. So back when I was regular. So I know it's TMI, but
Thank you for that information, Dr.
think about the physical we have. Some people get headaches. Some people get nauseous. Some people feel it in their head and in their hands. Some people, you know, get so to where they pass out.
Some get chattery.
Some get very chattery. That's true. So this is just to help you think about, you know, what's going on with your body, so you can make an effort, you know, to make sure that you're taking care of your own psyche, so it doesn't come out in the wrong way with students. So they're saying that 73% of people out there, when they are experiencing high forms of stress, that 73% of people have some type of physical reaction or psychological symptoms caused by stress. 35% cited job interfering with their family. And so that's kind of low. So that's kind of good that they're not letting their job interfere with their family. But some people do. There's still 35% of us that do. The most common physical symptoms are right there. I know the appetite change, yes. That's a big one. There's only 23%. So stress can actually make you tired. Who gets irritable when they're angry, when they're stressed?
Ooh, I do.
And stress shortens your life. Okay, so we're almost going, we're heading on an hour. So so we are what we eat. We need to watch how we're eating. Make sure they're drinking plenty of water. Because like we said, we don't know, you know, I'm preaching stuff that I'm not living right now with this high impact exercise and everything. They just said this is the best way to help with stress. And so I know I need to live what I'm preaching.
One who's willing not to exercise, so.
Like we could Jiu-Jitsu club.
I would do that. Who wants to do that?
Make sure that you take a second. This breathe part is important when you're dealing with the students and they're acting a fool. Make sure you breathe before you react. Take a breath. Think about what you're going to say. Don't just say it. Does it sound doable?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Nash, thank you very much for joining my training. I love you guys. I'm going to miss you guys. Y'all wish me luck.
We will keep in touch.